Welcome to Fast Draw 101. I'm Howard Darby, and today we're talking about wax bullets.
Shooters on the line. Shooters, set.
Now in Fast Draw we don't shoot live ammunition for safety reasons. We shoot wax bullets or blanks. And there's a lot of competitions, a lot of associations that only shoot wax bullets, but even when you have a blank competition coming up, a great way to practice it is with wax bullets, because you can take a 18-inch to 21-inch round target, place it where you're going to have the balloon, and if you can hit that, the spread of a blank is about the same as that target, and if you can hit the wax bullet on that target, you can hit it with a blank. So a lot of people never practice with blanks, they just use the blanks in competition and practice with nothing but wax. So wax is by far the biggest type of ammunition used in the sport of fast draw for practice, even for competition. Now when we're shooting wax bullets in fast draw, it's always at a metal target like this one here. There's a lot of different configurations, some square, some rectangle, some round. They all have a Lexan or plexiglass cover over the light, and they all have some sort of impact sensor on the back one. This is a magnetic one by JJ Electronics, attaches to the back. The cable from the clock goes into the sensor, and every time the wax bullet hits the target, the impact sensor registers it and stops the clock. Now often in competition we use lithium grease on the target, and it gives a white or light gray covering on the target, and you can see where the wax bullet hits, so that if the shooter there's a malfunction on the target, the shooter still gets their time because we can see the hit. Also that it makes sure that there wasn't bounce back off the backstop that hit the back of the target. We can tell if it was a hit and it wasn't a hit. Now in fast draw there are three ways to shoot wax bullets. The 209 shot shell primer is the way that most people will be shooting fast draw, but I'll show you the other two ways just so you know. One is to take a 45 long Colt cartridge, use a large pistol primer, and about 3.5 to 4 grains of Hosh and 777. Wax bullets then put on top. Now this type of load cannot be created by the shooter, it has to be provided by a host. Cowboy Fast Draw, World Fast Draw, you'll sometimes see that when you go to competitions. So don't worry about making that, you'll have it provided to you. Another way that you see in World Fast Draw Association is a cartridge that has a special off-center hole in the bottom to accept a 22 black powder blank. That 22 black powder blank goes in there, and 22s of course are rimfire. That places the rim of the shell right in the center, so when the firing pin hits in the center, it will fire and shoot the wax bullet out. By far the most common way to shoot a wax bullet is using a special 45 shell with a drilled out primer pocket big enough to accept a 209 shot shell primer. So that's what we'll concentrate on today. One thing to be aware of is that these wax bullets, even with a shot shell primer, will travel at over 800 feet per second. Even if you're using regular large pistol primers to propel the wax bullets, it's still 400 feet per second. So all normal firearm safety rules should be followed when shooting wax bullets. Now there are a number of manufacturers of wax bullets. I have three of the most popular here. Blue ones are made by Bandit Shooting Supplies. Red ones are made by Super Speed Wax Bullets. And green ones are made by CNR Wax Bullets. Some shooters prefer one bullet over another. The red and blue bullets, the Bandit and Super Speed, tend to break up on impact. The CNR Wax Bullets tends to flatten on impact. You get a single piece as opposed to all the pieces on the floor, but if you're having bounce back problems, you might want to go with one of the shattering ones, and you won't get hit by larger pieces coming back at you. But it all depends on your situation. People often ask if they can make their own wax bullets. Now for competition you can't, because we need to have a bullet that is being tested and we know the properties. We know it's not going to break the target, go through the plexiglass, it's not going to break the backstops. So we only allow the manufactured bullets in competition, but for practice you can use your own bullets if you want. The best way to do that is to take a cookie sheet and paraffin wax, melt it down, maybe throw in some crayons to make it a little softer. Fill the cookie sheet to about 1/2 inch, let it harden up a little bit so that it's not liquid anymore, and then take for your 45 shell that's been primed with a large pistol primer, put it in there, and like a cookie cutter, just pull it back out and leave the wax in there, and you can go and shoot that. Make sure it's not too runny so that it stays as a one solid thing at the top of the bullet, but you can shoot that pretty consistently. at about 8 or 10 feet. It's still about 400 feet per second, and it'll be pretty good for practice. If you want to make 209 shot shell primer cases, you can do that yourself if you have a lathe and the right drill bits. You can drill out the primer pocket and countersink the top of it to take the lip of the 209 shot shell primer. And that will work for you. You'll probably have a few duds along the way, but if you're pretty good at lathe work, you can make your own shells. Now, if you want to buy 209 shot shell primer cases, there are a few places you can do that, and I'll put the links to their websites in the description of this video as well as at the end of the video. They are Bob Graham Bandit Shooting Supplies, Spitfire Wax Bullets, and CNR Wax Bullets, as well as the Cowboy Fast Draw Association. And they generally go, at the time I was making this video, for about $35 for a box of 50. Now, we've talked about the wax bullets, we've talked about the shell casings. The third thing you need is the 209 shot shell primers. They come in packets of 100 like this, or boxes of 1,000. Now, when it comes to the manufacturers, we found that some of the bigger ones like CCI, Federal, Winchester, Remington, their primers tend to back out a little more than some other manufacturers. And backing out means that they expand and they jam up against the frame of the gun, stopping the cylinder from rotating, which is a little annoying when you're trying to practice and shoot your 5 shots, and you have to stop and unload after every shot. You can still do it, and I recommend you try those in your gun, because different guns have different ways of acting depending on the gaps between the cylinder and the frame. You might find those work fine, and if you're easily available at your gun shop, go ahead and use them. Try a pack, buy a pack of 100 and see how they do. Some of the types of primers that seem to work better for fast draw and don't jam up are the Rios, the Chedites, Fioshis, and Noble Sport primers, the 209s. They tend to not back up as much. Now, I've shown you about the wax bullets, the shells, and the primers. Of course, now we need to put it all together to shoot it. That's pretty simple. You just take your 45 cartridge, your wax bullet, put the bullet in the end of the cartridge, push it in all the way. Some of it is going to shave off, and that's good because that shows that it went in tightly. If it goes in too lightly, you're going to have a problem, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. Then you take your 209 shot shell primer and drop it in the other end. It'll go in with finger pressure. It usually just drops right in, and then you're ready to shoot. Now, after you finish shooting, if everything works well, the primer should drop straight out of the gun, and then the shell right out of the gun. You don't have to use anything to push out the primer, but occasionally you have to. Sometimes it does expand a little bit and gets jammed in there. You can either use a screwdriver to push down the shell and pop out the primer, or you can use your ejector rod housing. If you center up the shell with your ejector rod housing, when you push on that, it will push the primer right out of the shell. That's an easy way to pop out the primer if it's stuck. Now, I mentioned a minute ago to watch out for bullets that go too easily into the shell. If they don't shave off some excess wax, check them and see if they're too loose. And if they're popping up and down inside the shell, you could have a problem. Because what happens when you load it into the gun, and as it rotates around as you're shooting, when it gets to this position here, there's a lot of empty room here, and it could start poking out the front of the cylinder. Because when you're in the holster and it's facing downwards and you're waiting for your shot, that's when it can pop out. As it rotates around and it comes up to the point where it's against the frame, it's either going to shave off the top of the bullet, or the worst case is it'll just totally jam up the gun. And as you snap backwards to draw, or you try and fan the hammer, it's going to jam up and it's going to hurt your thumb, it's going to hurt your fanning hand, and it's not going to be good. So you don't want to have that happen. So make sure that when you put in the bullet, if you think it's too loose, turn it upside down, knock it on the table, see if it pops out. If it looks too loose, just get a screwdriver, pop it in the end, and knock out the bullet, put another one in. You may need to take your shells and resize them to make them small again. Otherwise, you're going to have some problems with that. So watch out for that. Some tips for shooting wax bullets. If you find you're getting hit by the bounce backs off of your backstop, try going to get some old carpeting from that you had ripped out of your own house, or from friends, or from an old carpeting replacement place. Hang it from a beam about 6 inches in front of your backstop. You don't want it right against it because that'll just make the bullets come back really fast. Hang it so it's loosely hanging in the air, 6 inches from the wall, and when the bullets hit that, they'll hit that and fall to the ground. Another tip, is using a wax bullet cleaner. This will clean your barrels really well. They're formulated to get the wax out of your barrels. Normal cleaning solutions will work, but these work a little better. They dissolve the wax. This one's Chief Firewater. I'll put the links in the description and at the end of the video. Another thing is there's wax bullet loaders you can get. This one here comes from the Cowboy Faster Association. You take your wax bullet shell, put it in that side, take your wax bullet on the top, and this goes in the top. Smash it down and it will load the bullets for you. This is really handy if you have bullets that you find are really hard to push into the shell, that if you're doing 50 or 100 of those to get ready to shoot, they can really hurt your fingers. So this is actually pretty easy. Smash it down, put it on the table as you're doing that, and you can go through the shells pretty easy and not hurt your fingers. One tip if you find you are having backup issues is instead of unloading after every shell, in case you might have a backup, is to get into the habit of testing your cylinder to see if it is locked up. And what I'll do is I'll shoot, and then I'll pull back the hammer just a little bit and see if it's locked in. If it's not, I can drop the hammer back in place, still the same with the same shot primer under the hammer, and put it back in the holster. And I get into such a habit of doing that I can do it pretty quickly, and it doesn't, nobody really notices, and it goes pretty fast. Shoot, check it, put it back. Shoot, check it, put it back. And that way you're not holding up everybody else on the line, and you're only having to remove the ones that actually are backed up.